Hey, Melissa. Okay. Not hearing you. You're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. How things going?
Good. Busy, busy, busy. I was just in at school
Oh, yeah?
and I didn't have my mask on because I wasn't expecting to see anybody there because it's not a food prep or delivery day.
Yeah.
So, and there were quite a few people there actually. So,
Really? What's going on?
just like Kelly Gay had told Jess that she needed to go in and work on something, and Jennifer McNaughton was in there, and Heather Doherty, who had a mask on, she was just racing by me to get out of there. But I think people are just in there. They might be looking at the returned student work. I'm not sure.
Oh, right.
But I think it was supposed to, like Jess said, the teachers K through 4 are supposed to be letting her know when they're going in there and kind of clearing it with her first so they can kind of minimize the amount of people.
Right.
And the amount of cleaning they have to do. But some people still aren't letting her know. So a little.
Huh.
And no one wants to make more work for the custodians. They have enough going on.
Yeah, they sure do. That's one of the funny things that I find fascinating about this whole thing is you have people out there saying things like teachers and school staff, they're not doing anything right now, so why are we paying them? And it's like, no, we're working like,
oh my gosh,
working more than ever because we're doing things in a completely new way that we're not used to. So we're fumbling and we're stumbling and we're bumbling along the way because we're working 5 times as hard to do the work that we could do normally in 10 minutes beforehand. Now it's taking us an hour and a half. Or like in my situation, I'm trying to truncate a normal 8-hour day or so into 5 hours.
Right.
Which and on top of that, when I have meetings like this, which I love having,
right,
but it takes me away from the stuff that I have to do. So that means after I put kids to bed,
right,
I might have to be up late at night doing the work, which I was always doing anyway.
Right.
But it's also like I'm also up early. I have not stopped.
Yeah.
You know, I try to take
more tiring.
Yeah, it is. It's tiring because it's so draining in so many ways. I think so much of it too is just the overall stress of everything and the uncertainty of everything is just weighing on us all the time.
Well, that's what I know I have an anxiety disorder because I'm a therapist, so I've just diagnosed myself, and I'm able to help other people with anxiety because I know what it feels like. But like the first 2 weeks of the shutdown, I was like immobilized and I was depressed and I was like, I can't do this. I was like, because it was so out of my routine. And I know for my anxiety, I need structure, I need consistency, and then I'm going to be okay. But, sure. And I'm pretty much driving my family nuts around here. But I'm finally in the groove of it. But it's really hard to be a school social worker of little kids from home because you kind of thrive and your job is interacting with them person to person, face to face, and I can't connect by email like Deb is able to do with the little ones. So I've been having to go through parents, which in a way is really good because it's helping my relationship with some of these tricky kids' parents because I'm constantly checking in with them and I always have to have the disclaimer, I hope I'm not irritating you by calling again, but I'm just curious how he's doing and, that kind of thing. And the parents have been wonderful.
I'm sure that on one level, they're probably like, oh my gosh, enough already. But on the other level, they're also like, it's really nice to know that they're checking up.
Exactly. And they do appreciate it.
It's really nice to know that someone is there and someone cares. And when it's not just you, but then it's also the teachers and it's other folks around who are doing that as well. It builds that community feeling of real love and pride in where we work and where we are. And that's one of the things that I find most heartening about the work that we're doing in our district.
Oh yeah.
It's very much unlike where where I live.
Right.
It's, where I live can't hold a candle to the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah. My sister used to live in Falmouth, and she worked for the Freeport school system as a special ed teacher.
Yep.
And she was like, I've never appreciated Dexter schools as much as I do when I work in some of these bigger schools where you are made to feel that the person does not really matter.
Doesn't matter.
They just have an agenda. And if you don't fit into their agenda, they're done with you. Like, you're done. So she's a paralegal now in South Carolina, because she had it with education. But
there's so much politics in a bigger school. I worked in Bonnie Eagle High School, which was, one of the biggest in the state. And
right.
There's a tremendous amount of politics that goes into just trying to get anything accomplished. And it's maddening. It's absolutely maddening. I don't know. I loved a lot of people I worked with there, but just I couldn't stand the way in which decisions were being made or not being made because it would upset certain groups of people. And I was like, but that's the right thing to do for kids. Why don't we do it this way? And so,
well, that's the, it's the bigger systems are hard to navigate sometimes. So, sister. Hi, Hillary.
Hey, Hillary. Hey, Sharon.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, Debbie.
Where's that darn mute button? I know it's here.
Oh my gosh, I was in a Zoom meeting earlier in the week. It was on Common Planning Times on Monday, and I won't say which teacher, but it was hilarious because her daughter was giving her a hard time in the background. And she started, like, not in an abusive way or anything, but she started going off on her and just being like, I told you, blah, 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 the mom voice. And she started, like, going off on her. And then it was really funny because someone was speaking at the time on Zoom. And she started going off on her daughter. Then all of a sudden she looked at the camera and she realized, oh my God, I'm not muted. So you could see her push the mute button and then continue to ream her daughter out. I'm like, I'm glad somebody else does that.
All I have is a dog. So it's not going to happen. Although he's decided not to come in. He's outside, and when he barks, I'll have to go get him.
Yeah, that's what mine does.
Well, did you also hear the other day at the Supreme Court what happened? They were having these arguments, and they're doing it all via Zoom and whatnot. And one of the justices forgot to turn their mic off and went to the. Come on.
Oh, yeah. It happens, right?
I guess so.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
How's Coleman doing?
Good. Just a second. I'll have him come say hi.
Burn rubber.
A burnout. Yeah.
Oh, okay. When you're doing donuts and stuff like that.
Sometime I'll demonstrate for you, Matt.
Oh, those I've done. We didn't call them a smoke show. I wasn't sure what that was.
Coleman is one of my husband's favorite people in the world. They relate on so many levels.
I can imagine. He's a neat kid for sure.
He knows every car.
Oh, totally. And he gets Frank's sense of humor, so they're perfect. Yeah, they're like Batman and Robin. So we did the work pickup last Tuesday, a week from today, and Greg and myself and a couple other people went through it all on Friday and sorted it by homeroom, and Greg delivered it to the classrooms, and we got a lot of work back. I was surprised because I was thinking, I was expecting a little bit for the younger children, but for the older students, I thought most of their stuff was probably online, but I was so impressed because so many parents got the work back to us. And it looked we didn't spend a lot of time looking through it, obviously, because that's up to the teachers, but just from what I saw, there were a couple students where I peeked a little bit and I was like, oh, this looks really good. So I was pleasantly surprised.
It's a real testament, I think, to our staff and to the fact that we spent so much time and so much energy and focus on the level of connecting versus just trying to maintain a status quo, and just connecting first,
Right.
and building those bridges and and access points that we're able to get that stuff back. So now we can start looking at the levels of improvement or not, or where they are, what needs to happen. Because if we didn't have those connections or access points, how would we be able to doing it now? We'd just be kind of floating.
Right.
So it's a real testament to our staff. I'm sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
As a teacher, I wasn't sure when we could go in and look at that stuff. So I know that Sue Griffiths and our team went to school yesterday, and I wasn't sure when teachers were allowed. So I was hoping to go tomorrow morning because I figured they were there in the office on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So maybe they'll see what students had brought in.
Yeah.
I asked
You know what I would do?
Yeah, I asked Jess point blank for 3rd and 4th, and she said she prefers Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to noon, because that's when somebody's there.
So that's I was going to go tomorrow to see what was there.
Yep.
Just to get
You
an
still
idea
need
for.
to sign in so they know you've been in, but yeah.
Yeah, and I would shoot, Kathy, I would shoot Greg a quick email just to say, I was thinking of going in tomorrow. Is there a better time? Is that okay? I would do that because that's what the younger teachers who teach the younger kids have been doing that with Jess, just to let them know when they're in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Melissa, folks are still being asked to sign in at the front desk, right? So that it's clean after they leave.
Right.
I was telling Matt, I was in there this morning because I had to get a student's file and copy something, and I was startled because Heather Doherty came around the corner and I almost ran into her. And I didn't have my face mask on because when I got there were like hardly any cars in the driveway except down by the super's office. So I thought I could just sneak in and out, but I wasn't. Then I felt that. I said, oh my gosh, I should have my mask on. I'm sorry. She had hers on, but.
So what are people thinking about? What are people wanting to chat about? We can talk about anything that's going on in the district. Obviously some major topics happening right now are things like end of the year, what's happening with that. We can talk about, I've been getting a lot of questions recently on grading and reporting. We could talk about that. We could talk about wellness. We can talk start of the year next year, what's going to happen with that, because we're in process of ramping up those kind of plans and committees and teams. Or we could just talk about gardening. And
burnouts.
And burnouts. And how I'm deep down the rabbit hole of the show Community, which was one of my top 10 favorite shows of all time. It's just this fantastic show that was on for 6 seasons, and Joel McHale, Donald Glover, Gillian Jacobs, Allison Brie. It's an amazing cast, and I could go on and on about this show. It's some of the best writing I've ever seen in any television show, hands down.
What station? Is it Netflix or?
It's on Netflix now. It was originally an NBC show. It was
It's
on
kind
Netflix.
of like Parks and Rec, right?
It was around that same kind of idea-ish, but it wasn't it's a single camera kind of a show, but it is very different than any other sitcom I've ever seen, because it brings in so many pop culture references and connections and very interesting writing, very interesting performances that it's phenomenal. I loved it when it was on live, and I was when this whole thing started, I was really excited or hoping, I was like, I wish I could watch Community again because I really missed that show. And then on April 1st, it came back, and I've just been thrilled. Just the little things. Whatever you want to talk about.
I'd really like to hear about any decisions that have been made around grading personally and what we're going to be doing. I mean, are we doing anything in Power School? Like what is the expectation?
Sure. So any and all grading comes down to basically two quote unquote numbers, I guess, if you want to put them there. One would be the meets or the applies or the 3. That's, and any grading since we've been closing, let me say that, since we've been closed. So if they've met expectations, you put in a 3. If they've gone above the expectations, you put in a 4. That's great. What we want to do though is have a policy of do no harm, and trying to do a nuanced 1 or a 2 or a 2.5 is hard enough in a in-person setting. It's nearly impossible to do it remotely. So the best option here is to kind of take a single point rubric approach, which is you're there, let's say a 3, and here's how you got there, and here's where you need to go next. Perfect. The other option is you're not there yet. Here's where you are, and here's where you need to go next. So in Power School, if they've gotten there, you put in a 3. If they haven't gotten there, my recommendation is don't put in anything. Don't put in a grade. It's better, it's kind of a better option than a 0, because I mean, even though a 0 in our scale means a no evidence, you're getting evidence. You're getting stuff from them. They're just not there yet. But we don't want to put in the 1s or the 2s because we can't find the equity side of everything. So if we can try to not put something in if they don't get a 3, but the real crucial part in Power School is going to be the commentary, the feedback, along with what's going on there, because that's the stuff that's going to transition year to year, teacher to teacher. That's going to be part of that student's overall record that goes beyond just the communications you're having individually, but it becomes, here's where you are, here's why you got here, here's where you need to go next. And that detailed record is probably the most important thing that we're going to need going forward in the fall, way more than just a number.
Okay, thank you. And my biggest concern was really what to do for students who, you know, I haven't heard them at all. And I think that leaving it blank, because, you know, going with the second trimester grades and then leaving the third blank, I feel like is a better representation because, you know, and I don't expect for art to be necessarily like top priority for families right now. So it's good to know that I can just leave it blank and make a comment and that's acceptable. So,
what I'm hoping is
that.
What I'm hoping is that the Power School system will also be okay with that. We're kind of in unprecedented territory for that. We haven't tried that out. What we can't do, unfortunately, is we have our grade scale plugged into the system. We can't change it. So we can't all of a sudden make a 1 or a 2 mean different things or just eliminate those. We can't do that midstream. So we have to live with the grade scale that we have put in place. So our best options then are the 3 or the 0. There might be a couple of other like AI or something else in there, but those get confusing. So since our general policy is to do no harm, and you can look at the first 2 trimesters of information, and if the third trimester would say build on those first 2 trimesters, then you'd say, well, I have enough evidence from the first 2 trimesters, here you go. And if it's new stuff, you put no evidence in. If it's old stuff, so it really depends, but the real critical component is going to be the level of communication of the feedback that's going to be in there. And it has to be thorough and comprehensive and deep and meaningful, not just quick canned comments, but it's got to be like real stuff in order in order for the teachers next year to know and also to be part of that record, so they can see everything. And I'm going to work with Paul to make sure, to do our best, our darndest to see if Power School will be able to do that. I'm sure it will. I don't have any concerns, really high level concerns. If I had high level concerns, I wouldn't be saying it, promoting it. And if I'm wrong, and if I make it big, it doesn't work, I'll be the first one to say, nope, I was off. This was a bad idea.
Well, I know in the past when I've had a student say, come in as a new student, maybe, and I've only seen them once or something because of the way that the art days fell before we were expected to grade. So I really didn't have enough evidence to, give any kind of a number there. I have left it blank if I've only seen them like once or twice in the past, and it was never an issue.
And I think that's going to be it's a crucial step. It's one that's going to make some folks uncomfortable because they're going to feel like they need to put a letter or a number in for some reason, for a transition purpose, whether it's to go to the next grade level, to the next school, for a GPA, etc. But what I also want to remind everyone with that is that, let's say they're concerned about a GPA for a college application or something, going down that road. The colleges are in the exact same situation we are. They're going to be well understanding and aware of what happened this current year. And so as long as we provide an explanation, some evidence of what happened and what we're doing about it, what the student has done about it, they're going to be all good. That's all they're going to be looking for. They don't need the number. They don't need the letter. That's an arbitrary benchmark that we have held on to, that we're proving now is not necessary for learning. So,
Matt, can I selfishly ask a question?
I don't like
more
grade.
personal and professional, in that I have a child who's in high school, and I do worry that there is no numerical grade for him, and I wonder how this is going to affect things like class ranking and all of that good stuff.
So what's going to happen basically there is, all right, I won't go into my jag about how I don't think class ranking should be a thing either, but what's going to happen is that they're going to go based on the first 3 quarters, more or less, because the third quarter closed right around that time. That's going to be basically the end of any kind of ranking, GPA kind of thing. I know the recommendation from the district, and what I think is what's being pushed, as long as I knew, and I kind of helped create that, was to not count this stuff now towards anything like that, like honor rolls or class rankings and stuff like that, because all that's going to do is highlight the socioeconomic divide. It's going to highlight the haves and have-nots, and that's something that I don't think we want to celebrate. Is those who haves get the rewards, and those who don't, for whatever reason, are not able to be, they're going to be like left out because of something that's outside of their control. So I would say that's generally speaking what's going to be happening with that stuff. I will double check with Steve and Jen to make sure. But again, the policy is do no harm. So if the students were at a certain class ranking before when they went out, it really shouldn't impact it that much, if at all. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. The whole point of our sending out that grading document a couple weeks ago was to help alleviate some stress on these things, to be like, breathe, everyone relax. The point is, let's not focus on the grading because it doesn't matter. Yes, some colleges, yes, some scholarships will require it. That's why we have guidance folks who figure that stuff out. That's part of their profession, part of their expertise. So we can figure that stuff out on the back end. It doesn't mean it's necessarily needed. Go ahead, Debbie.
So if I put my hat off just for a second, I do have a couple of clients in high school, and I think that for some of them, they're going to just do what they've always been doing. But for some, this has been really anxiety producing for them. And I'm just wondering, how do we as a district creatively give them the message that you just said to me, but in a way that doesn't encourage them to say, then you know what, I'm going to blow off the next month if it really doesn't matter, right?
Well, that's the next step, is that like we're talking with Hillary, with the blanks or the leaving it blank, that's not excusing it. What we're not saying is you can just blow it off and then move on to the next thing. This is what's going to be so complicated, and this is what we're going to have to. I'm having my first meeting of the Return to Instruction Committee in a couple of days, our team, that we're going to be looking and asking these very hard questions, because one of the things that's going to be crucial is our learners are going to be coming back. Some will have been gone far and above. Others will not have done a whole heck of a lot for whatever reason. There's no judgment to that. And what we can't do is just say, all right, you move on or you stay back. That kind of language can't happen. So what we're going to have is a bunch of, say, 11th graders, let's say hypothetically, they're going to be all over the map. So what our instructors are going to have to do at every single level is figure out where those kids are based on their content area standards and their content area needs. And there's going to be very wide gaps. And every teacher is going to have to figure out how to differentiate to be able to adjust and to meet those gaps, meet those needs. And it can't be a thing like, oh, well, you go back to 5th grade or you go up to 9th grade or whatever it is. It has to be more that real individual level. And that's going to be super challenging. It's going to be incredibly hard. And I've never shied away from that. But it's also the right thing to do for the kids.
Thank you for letting me fill that question out there. I got to sign off though. I'm heading off to another Zoom meeting.
I understand. I'm booked all day.
Bye.
Bye.
So I'm going to ask my team's question. We were talking and they wanted to know, so you have habits of work, then you have your standards. So what's expected for that?
Well, if the work that they're doing at home should be aligned to some kind of standard.
Right.
So whatever, and we have our scales that are based on those standards. So we can be assigning very simple grades in the standards wise of have they done it, have they not. When it comes to habits of work, that's a little trickier because that's way harder to determine, because so much of habits of work is observational and it's in person. And we don't really have a solidly defined remote learning list of things that what it means to be respectful, responsible, etc.
That would be the one you suggest leaving blank, or?
I would say unless the student is demonstrating that she is there or doing things and above and beyond, go for it. If a student isn't, that's where you might leave it blank too. The habits of work is going to be a hard one to navigate, and I don't have a good answer for it because it's going to be so individual. You're going to look at your class. You're going to look at your whole like 7th grade class, and you're going to say, well, Susie over there hasn't turned in one GD thing this whole time. So I'm not going to give her anything for habits of work because I haven't seen anything. Yet the reality is her situation could also be she is taking care of 2 or 3 or 4 other kids. We haven't been able to connect with that family. And as a result, she hasn't actually had the physical or mental or emotional state to actually do it.
Right.
So are we really willing to make that judgment on on the behavior side of that. And that's where I would very strong, I can't tell you what to do. That's not part of my authority, or I don't really have any authority. I can only make recommendations. It's kind of up to the building administrators to implement it all. But my recommendation would be, I would tread very, very, very carefully with habits of work. And try to think of all the potential variables, and you would literally have to look at every single kid in an individual way, not just try to lump them all under one cookie cutter approach, because that just won't work. I just don't see it happening fairly.
Yeah, we've noticed some of the teachers have looked at some of the work and it's not in the students' handwriting. So there's that piece too, like whether or not the parents have done the most of it or whether the kids dictated or whatever. So there's that, that piece too. We're excited to get something back, but it's not in the student handwriting.
So what do you do with that?
Well, that was one of the comments they were talking about for grading, which, yeah, I don't think there's any really good answers. I do think we have to give feedback because parents I think we're going to be in trouble if this happens again and we don't honor what comes back somehow.
Sure, absolutely, 100%.
You know, because I know it hasn't been easy on families and it hasn't been easy on our teachers with children either. So I think we have to be respectful in at least giving some kind of feedback.
I agree.
But I haven't seen any of the work beyond, this is some of the things we know because parents have sent pictures of the work. So that's how teachers haven't really been in to do a lot of grading yet, but they've gotten some physical pictures through the internet. And it's definitely not student writing. So.
Well, one of the approaches you could take with that, is you could say, you know, again, feedback. I'm getting a lot of great stuff here. The words are here. It's very clear that you're doing some great thinking. The challenge that I'm facing is I'm not seeing it in your handwriting. Mm-hmm. And so from let's say if it's a reading prompt, I can guess that it's yours, but what I also want to do is I just don't have enough evidence yet to make sure that I can make that judgment. This is leaning me in that direction. You can say that to the kid and to the parent. This is leaning me in that direction, but I can't give the grade yet because I just don't have enough evidence yet.
Right, and it's tricky, Matt, because we do have some students who have issues with their writing, and we allow them to verbally let us know. So they could have dictated to the parent. It could truly be their work, but we can't prove that.
Right.
So
absolutely. And that's where
things in, and again, we have to be respectful of that, or we're going to get nothing the next time around. So.
And that's where you just that feedback loop becomes crucial. You get saying things like, "Yep, I see it. This is great. I love it. It's clear that you're working on it. What I'd love to see next is you doing it through the handwriting. If you could take a picture of it and send it along the way, or do a video of it, or if you need to help with technology in some way, if you don't have technology access, whatever, we can figure something else out." But it's that level that's where the communication comes in. That's why like I said at the beginning, I think that the work coming back is such a testament to the connection that our teachers, our educators have made with the families, because they saw that the school, the teachers care, that they want to be involved with them, that we're going to work this out together. We don't know what we're doing, but we're going to figure it out. And as a result, they said, okay, we're in. And then they give back. And now we give back to them. That's that symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
You know, and if it's like I said, if it's a reading standard, you could be like, hey, I'm leaning towards this way for a reading standard. I just need a little more evidence of it. If it's a writing standard, you'd say like, well, I can kind of tell this isn't your handwriting. So what I would need to see is actually your handwriting before I can get enough evidence to give it any kind of measurement on it.
Okay.
I would also further say, not if, but when this happens again.
Right. Well, yeah.
As
That was actually going to be my next question is, I've heard a little bit of conversation about the beginning of the year, but have there been any, I know you mentioned that you guys are sort of starting to plan or think about that. So what are the thoughts?
So there are 3 district-wide committees or teams that are being formed. There's a safety and wellness committee. There's a social emotional committee, learning committee, and there's a return to instruction committee. I'm on the social emotional learning and the instruction. I'm actually leading up the instruction committee. And part of what we're going to be looking at least I'll talk for the instruction side. We're going to be looking at, I'm looking at 3 different stages. One is what we have to do first, which is trying to create our framework for working in, what we have to make happen. What are the things we need to think about? The next step is, what are we going to do before school opens? What are the things that have to happen? Meanwhile, we have to think about things like summer school and all this other summer stuff that goes along the way. So these committees are, along with the district administrative team, are trying to work through all the different components and layers of how to reopen safely in a way that is going to be respectful and equitable. I've said this before in other of these meetings, but one of the things that we have to go back to school with is a mentality that there will be families that are not going to want to send their kids back because they're scared. Maybe the kids themselves have some kind of a pre-existing condition, or they live in a house with someone who has a pre-existing condition, and schools already are petri dishes. So it's an issue of genuine, legitimate fear, and we have to honor that and be empathetic with that and understanding. And so what our educators, our instruction has to be is both in-person and remote learning simultaneously. How the heck do we do that? So part of the committee that I'm going to be running is to be looking at different layers of, what does that mean? How do we assess? What are the ways in which we assure every kid is on track? What is it that we need? What do we have? What's lacking? What do we need? And that's what the district is working on right now. There's not a whole lot of guidance out there. There are some districts or some states that have just kind of, I saw one from Missouri, I think it was, it said, here's what to do for all the schools to open up. And the list was like 100 pages long and it was impossible to do.
Right.
So we're going to have to take one step at a time, think about it safely and securely, but also think about it in terms of the human side. That's the number one of everything with all of this. So we're working on it. If you want to be any part of those committees, let your building administrator know. Because I think they're still looking, they might still be looking for people, maybe not, I don't know. I'm looking for a couple other people from Ridgeview. But it's going to be a lot of work over the next couple months, I'll tell you that much. It's not going to be fun. Yeah, that's kind of where we are. I was listening to the hearing this morning with Dr. Fauci and everyone in front of the Senate Health and Education Committee, whatever it is, and a lot of questions about education and questions about what are the guidance that the CDC and folks down there in Atlanta and whatnot can give to schools. And the answer was basically, yeah, we don't know. We don't have anything yet. It's really up to the locals to decide, which we're all going, what?
It's interesting because Ed got his hair cut yesterday, and just what his hairdresser had to go through to cut his hair, cleaning down the chair and then waiting for the chair to dry. And then she's supposed to change her smock, but she says she can't afford that. So she's using plastic bags in between customers. And you're thinking, oh my God, if they're doing that to keep someone safe to cut their hair, how do we have 10 to 20 kids running around a classroom?
Uh-huh. Is it a thing where we do something like, all right, let's just take the middle school, for example. that wing up there. What one day, a week, let's say on a Monday, is when 6th grade comes in. But it's not just the 6th grade teachers, it's everyone in that wing teaches 6th grade to make sure that we can do social distancing effectively enough for all the kids. Like, that's an idea that might need to be thrown out and looked at, that we get away from just teaching our grade level to we have to be teaching our grade span now.
Right.
That might be a reality that we might have to face. I'm not saying we will do that, but I'm saying that's, if we're going to come back in and we're going to do it effectively and safely, how?
And it's not just even that. I was watching videos in Japan where the kids have to stand 6 feet apart. They have to have a temperature check, and then they get their squirt of whatever. Then they load the bus. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's just.
We'll have to start doing the bus lineup at like noon.
So, yeah, but that's what we're saying. It's
it already takes a long time.
Eating in your classroom, that's not a huge deal. It's not, but you know.
But are we gonna expect every single kid in the building to come in and wear a full-on mask and nitrile gloves for the whole day?
Well, I would say mask, maybe not gloves, but definitely yeah, I don't know. That's the point. I think, and that's what's hardest for the teachers I work with, is we don't know. And we like to know. We like to have an understanding of what we're facing. And then I think about, we have staff members who have compromised immune systems, and what does that look like for them? So,
or who live with people who have compromised immune systems, or and I've heard people say things like, well, up in Penquist region, etc., we've had very few cases, so we'll be okay. Well, for one, very few confirmed cases, because there hasn't been a lot of testing that's happened. Number two, I live in Saginaw. I live less than a mile from Cumberland, which has the most cases. How do you feel about me coming into the building? Now, I've left my house twice in the last 8 weeks or so. I've got in my car twice. I'm very, very, very meticulous about this stuff, but I still could be asymptomatic. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is everyone gonna be comfortable with me coming in the building, knowing that? And that's the reality, because this disease thing does not care about our borders.
Yeah. Nope.
There's a lot to consider, and there's a lot unknown, and we're not going to have all the answers before we come back.
Nope.
Sorry.
No,
I know that's not what people like hearing. But here's what I also do know with this. If our staff and our profession was able to Apollo 13 this thing over a weekend, and to come back in from a Friday to a Monday or a couple days and say, we're going to completely redesign our entire education system, and the way that we've done it in our district is like a shining beacon for how to do it in our state, and our state is a shining beacon for how to do it in the country educationally. If we have time to plan, I'm pretty confident we're going to do a good job at it, because we have great people thinking on this. That's something that makes that really eases my ever-growing anxiety, is I know the team and I'm confident in the team.
well, I appreciate you putting out your how to host a Zoom meeting today. I don't think I can come because I've got a meeting with Holly and the coaches, but I do have some teachers that said they were going to come. We've had that conversation, how it's going to have to change a little bit if and when and if this happens again. There's going to have to be more teaching this way. And I think, again, it's going to give them a little bit more so we can start practicing with each other beyond packets. I just think it's going to have to change a little bit. and
It will.
have face to face as we move forward. So
It will. I mean, I've thought about things like trying to get every classroom one of those owl cameras, which is this little tower that can do a
those are expensive.
360-degree camera that can live stream or can record your classroom environment to a cloud service or to Google Drive or whatever it is. So then what we're able to do is take the in-person classroom and make it available to those kids who aren't able to be there.
Right.
So
Yeah,
they don't necessarily miss anything, which then brings up questions about things like, well, if they actually participate in that and do the work, do they count attendance-wise?
Yeah, and I know, like, from the seminar I had with Greg Tang, he talked about that and the importance of that, but he said you can't see if the student understands or not. So by doing Zoom and projecting it up on your TV, you at least get to see their faces and you can say, oh, Matt doesn't understand, or maybe he needs, or he can show you the work, where if you video record it, you can't get that feedback from kiddos. So it's just,
Absolutely.
it's wrong, it isn't, but
Absolutely.
it's not exactly what we do either, because you can't see what the kids are physically doing.
Yep.
It'll be interesting. It gives us something to look forward to, and I do believe we're doing the very best we can.
And that best is really, really, really good. I got to tell you, seeing what's happening around the state and around the country, our best is really, really, really good.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm hearing, teachers don't feel that they're doing a good job, so that's important that it's being said. The other part is they're hearing from other educators, like they know some schools or some teachers are doing more Zoom than they are, or pre-recorded, or so it feels like we're not doing enough. I mean, teachers have a big, huge, I'm not going to describe it well, but they don't feel like they do enough with
So
what
Sharon, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
How is that any different from how they were feeling like a year ago?
Oh, it isn't. No, it's not. Yeah, I get that. I do get that.
And that's just that's just a human trait.
Right.
We're doing enough because we work in an empathetic environment. We work in a human-centered
Right.
thing. We want to do as much as we can. Am I doing enough? And am I getting enough love back? Because if I'm giving the love out, there's a part of me that kind of wants to get some love back.
That's the other thing I'm hearing is they don't have enough contact with kids, and that's bothering them as well. But, that's why we do
I think it's great to be critical of ourselves that way, but I think it's also important to take a step back and to be like, we're really doing some good things.
Mm-hmm.
In a nearly impossible situation.
I will say that I share that a lot. We're doing everything we can. Like now we're trying to at least do those whole group Zoom meetings to get to feel how that is. And we're taking turns hosting them. And they're fumbling through it, but it's okay because we're telling the kids we're learning. It's okay. I believe they're doing a good job. They just need, And even if everybody told them every day, they'd still wonder. You're right. You're right. I miss the teachers I work with too. I miss that socialness. And Zoom is nice, but it's not the same.
Not the same.
Yeah. I have a Zoom meeting with a couple of my girlfriends on Wednesday, and that's lovely, but not the same. So.
Well, I don't think any of us got into education to do remote learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's not why we did this, because we wanted to be around kids. We wanted to be with kids because we love them and they're awesome.
My husband and I were talking about that because, we tend to be, especially at the younger grade levels, physical. You hug, and Ed's like, you can't do that. You just can't. When you go back to school, Sharon, you can't hug them, and you can't. And I'm like, it just, it's who we are, and it's what they need and what they want. So. Yeah, it'll be different, for sure.
Going
Maybe
big.
we'll get those little plastic bubbles. They were showing those, like beach balls. We could all have a beach ball that we move around in.
Roll it around the halls like
Yeah.
marbles.
We talk about invisible bubbles. Maybe we need those. Teachers will get those balls. That's what we'll have. We'll teach from those.
But Bodie actually said yesterday, he's like, Mom, he's like, I don't get it. Why don't we all just wear hazmat suits all the time? It's kind of sad.
Yeah, but you can still breathe and stuff. The bubble's better.
Sharon, I think you've stumbled onto some awesome opportunity for professional development.
What, bubbles?
If we can get, if we could just bring like people together and just have like a barbecue, yet we're all in the bubbles.
Right.
That would be the funniest damn thing that would ever happen.
Bring back the sumo wrestler costumes that you
Oh
have.
my God, yeah.
You know? Yep. Or what? Scuba gear with the, you know? Yeah. There are schools where they teach from behind cages.
Yep. I do have one of those inflatable T-Rex costumes, because of course I do. And it has that plastic mask in there, so we could all just be a bunch of inflatable T-Rexes.
Yeah, then we wouldn't have to worry about what we had on for clothes. In the bubble, they can see you. I have to think about that.
Would it be possible to start out with a meeting just a one-on-one with a student and a family? I don't know, when we look at next fall. And I don't know, to plan like what they would, how they see their education for next year. I don't know.
Of course.
Miss that, you know, maybe one-on-one you could do that and start, you know.
Yep. That's of course on the table. That could absolutely happen. That can happen now.
Right.
You know, that's something that can happen right now. As long as, you know, we're practicing the social distancing side of everything, there's no reason why that can't happen still. Could it happen in the building? That might be a bit more of a challenge, but given that it's getting a little nicer out, and could you go out and meet in the parking lot and just, you know, get a couple of camp chairs and just sit out there and have a conversation? Sure. Great idea. Yeah, rethinking conferences. Do we do them first thing?
Speaking as a parent, because I have Coleman, and he sometimes has hard times. He gets really upset. He just wants to play with another kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he wants. Like you talk about Zoom and stuff. He's done some of that with his friends. That isn't what.
No, it's not the same.
Not the same.
Not the
They
same.
just want to play. So I think when you start getting them back together, that has to be looked at, because they just want to play and, you know, and.
Oh yeah, it's driving my 7-year-old crazy.
Yes, Coleman's 8, just turned 8. So he had a birthday during all of this. So you can't have your kid party.
That's happening to my daughter, my eldest daughter, this Friday. We're doing a Zoom birthday party.
But it's not the same. That it's really.
Kind of like Little House on the Prairie, where really the only kids you had to play with are your brothers and your sisters, because everybody lives so darn far away, except for on special occasions like funerals and weddings and church.
Yep.
Except he's an only child.
I know. Yeah. And Grammy said, yeah, I didn't play with my kids the same way as their friends did either. So,
Right.
I
So
didn't want to. Poor thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that this disease isn't been thought of like people used to think of chicken pox. You know, like get all the kids together early on so that everyone can get the disease, and then they just deal with it and then move on with it. Like that happened to me growing up. I got it from other kids because parents heard that, yeah, well, some other kids got it, so well, it's better to get them when they're young, so give it to them when they're young. So I'm glad that this is not happening with this one.
Well, it's got to be scary with the new rash of children who are struggling with it. Because originally it was thought that they were asymptomatic or didn't get it as badly. And
Yeah, they're learning so many new things about it every single day. That's why I say when we go out, or when this looks differently in the fall instead of the if, because we are learning new things about it, and we just don't, there's so much. The amount that we don't know is overwhelming compared to what we do know.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna check off because I just wanted to see some faces. I didn't.
Me too.
It's nice to see people. Then I have to get ready for my next one. So, all right. I'll see you guys next week. Bye. Lead meeting.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Thanks for the information. And it was good to see all of you.
Good to see you too.
Appreciate it.
Matt, did Miranda hop on at some point? I was obviously late.
Haven't seen Miranda, no.
I'd encouraged her to do that. Did she reach out to you through email about the whole grading thing?
Yeah.
Remember I did, and then
Yeah, last week or so.
yeah, and she was gonna. She had some high school specific questions. I said, well, then why don't I step back and you can just reach out to him? And I guess she hasn't done that.
Yeah, I haven't heard much else in the way of questions in that end, but it's, what I've said is going to be what I'm going to say, is that the way to do this right is to stop worrying about transcripts and stop worrying about these other things, and simply say, if you did it, you're there. If you haven't, keep going. But to also say, you're not going to get a grade until you show me you can do it.
Yeah.
Then I'll give you a grade. I'm happy to give you a grade at any time later on. But you also can't advance or get the certification or get the checkbox or whatever it is that you've done this class, say this year, until you've met these expectations. And it's really that cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
And we can hold on to that. We just don't have to put in the numbers or the letters. All the other stuff that goes along with it, the ones, the 2.5s, etc.
Yeah.
All that doesn't matter.
Yeah. You were saying, if I remember correctly, your answer, you said to enter a 0, that gives an incomplete?
Well, part of the intention of the 0 in the grade scale is that there's either no evidence or it has not yet been assessed. The challenge with the 0 in this situation is this teacher might be getting students or getting information from students, and it might be in a typical format, might be at a 2. But we really don't know where it is. It's just not there yet. It's somewhere. So it's best, honestly, to just leave it blank.
Leave it blank. So
to not put a score in, put in the comments, put in feedback, but not put in a grade.
Like right in Power School?
In Power School.
So now, I have a few different things in my head. So I'm cool with that, but Miranda is trained as a teacher.
Yeah.
And she's very type A.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as an insult, trained as a teacher.
Oh, no. I know where you're going.
Yeah. And so she's really struggling.
Yeah.
And
because ambiguity for, a lot of teachers, they've learned over the course of the years that 1, I can do this. 2, I want to do it well, and I want to do it right, and I want to do it well and right the first time. And the unfortunate reality is there's no well in this. Well, there's a lot of well. There's no right, and there's no first time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of missteps. There's a lot of ambiguity, a lot of squish. And
so the answer, do your best, the best you can. That just puts her in a tailspin. She doesn't know what that means.
Sure.
and I've talked to other teachers who are in that boat as well. And so no matter how many, like, you know, I read the email you sent me, and I read the, I can't think of the document, but
Yep,
you know,
the
the
grading,
guideline
yep.
for it.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, you know, I can do that, but for others, that's tough.
It is tough. Especially if you disagree with it. And there's
Yeah.
some folks
Right.
who think that we should just be carrying on as normal. And I have to say that the guidelines did not come from me. They were pulled together from me. They were, I mean, I did pull it all together, but the guidelines came from national and international experts on this. And what was really nice is that we put out our guidelines, and then like a week later, the DOE came out with their guidelines, and they basically echoed what we had already done. So that told us we're on the right page here.
Yeah.
If they'd gone a completely different direction, we would have been like, oh, we're up a creek now. But we were on the right page. So so there's that. But the trained as a teacher and as a high school teacher, as a high school teacher for a while, we rely heavily on the grades as our markers.
Yeah.
And now you're told to not. So what is the marker? And the marker is the feedback. What makes it easier for me is that I started off elementary. I started off pre-K, actually, is where I first started. Then I moved to elementary. That's where I was originally trained as a teacher, to be elementary level. And it was all feedback. That's all it ever was, because the letter numbers don't matter.
Yeah.
So that was an easier transition for me. But for other teachers who've been doing it for a long time, or have been trained in this particular way, and have come up through the system and been given it to themselves in that way, and they were successful in the grading situation, and they'll say, well, no, the grades motivated me to do my work, to get my stuff done. What about the 21 other kids in your classroom?
Right.
And that's the thing, is that the grades don't motivate the other kids. So it's going to be really hard for those teachers who are really hanging on to that stuff. They believe that it's one thing when all the evidence and research is actually saying the exact opposite of something we've always gone and done.
Yeah.
And where the guidelines were intentionally vague in some ways, because they were a framework, they also should be some level of, okay, this is all I have to do. So all I have to focus on is the connecting and the teaching and the feedback. I don't have to worry about the grading. I don't have to worry about it. It's not important. That was what it was intended to be. Whether that hit or not, I guess in some folks it didn't.
I think too, for me, so I've not said this too loudly, because there are different schools of thought even within JMG about this. But I right along, before any of this even happened, yes, I give assignments. Yes, I give grades.
Sure.
They are expected to meet, you know, the standards within JMG. But I'm more interested in the effort that they have put in, whether they've shown an investment in this program they're a part of, than slamming them with a 1, you know, because they don't know how to spell correctly and, I don't know, struggled with the learning aspect because that's who they are, kind of thing. Sure. And so I see JMG, we're supposed to be there as helping them, motivating them, and engaging them to stay in school, and look towards what their goals are and progress and feel like they're a part of something. So I'm pretty lenient. I admit it to you. Thank God no one else is on here, but I'm pretty lenient with my grading, because for me, for those particular students, it's about them wanting to be there and learn something.
I want to challenge you to say that it's not that you're being lenient. It's that you're focusing on their needs, and you understand that their needs aren't that a grade is going to motivate them. You know, if a grade motivate, and I hate to put this blanket generalization or stereotype out there, but if a grade motivated them, would they be into JMG to begin with? Probably not.
Yeah.
A lot of them are getting into JMG because they haven't been successful in school.
Yeah.
For one reason or they need a different pathway. And one of the ways that we identify whether kids are successful in school is through grades. So clearly it hasn't worked for most of these kids. So
Yeah.
I think your approach is not lenient. It's actually more empathetic. It's more saying, it didn't work for you, so why would I continue to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That's a good way to say it. And I struggle too, because when I attend meetings like 7th and 8th grade CPT, and I'll say, you know, I don't want to betray student trust, but I might say, you know, so-and-so is having a really hard time. You know, they have a younger sibling who the parents don't put to bed, so they're up all night putting their younger sibling to bed, and they're coming into school exhausted or something to that effect. And right. Sometimes I kind of get blank stares. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? How's that my problem? Kind of thing.
I think you're going to find that those blank stares will now be a little more open.
I hope so.
Because that's what this is all shining a light on.
Yeah. I know you, oh, gee, you got to start your thingy at 3 and it's after 2:30. So one last quick question, because I don't want to be doing something wrong pertaining to the school's guidance.
Okay.
If I don't get work back, do I just throw an incomplete in there, or do I just leave it? Leave it
blank.
Just leave it.
Because you have no evidence. You've got nothing. And then what we can say in the fall or when we come back or whenever that is going to be something like, here's where you left off. I tried to connect with you to give opportunities for this stuff, and it was a different way, but you didn't connect back. So guess what? You're still here.
Okay. So I just don't want the school going, where are all your grades?
Well, that's something that we're going to have to work with the administrators to make sure that they understand and that they're empathetic on. I'm fairly confident that at Ridgeview, they get that.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
And they're in support of it as well. But also because grades aren't as meaningful down at Ridgeview as they are up the hill, the high school level. And I say important, and it's only because we place importance on them. It's not because they actually are important. What is important is the connection, stuff like this.
Yeah.
That's the real important stuff.
Yeah.
Especially with all this other nonsense happening.
Well, I'm going to let you go, and I am going to be on your 3 o'clock to see what things I could be doing better. So
okay, just be prepared. I have nothing prepared, so I don't know what's going to happen.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks, Matt. Bye.